Welcome to the DoLS podcast, a collaboration between students and staff in the Department of Life Sciences at Imperial College London. We're delighted you are listening and excited to be hosting this series, celebrating International Women's Week 2023. Tag along as we speak to 5 women in the department from varying career types and stages.
Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of International Women's Week podcast. My name is Alice and I'm a research master's student in molecular plant and microbial sciences. This podcast series will be an opportunity to hear from various women working in different areas of life sciences as we come up to International Women's Day. This year we have invited some of our own scientists, researchers and staff at Imperial to talk about being a woman in science, how they got to where they are in their career and some changes they'd like to see implemented. We are very excited to welcome Dr Doryen Bubeck onto the podcast today, who is a reader in Structural Immunology at Imperial and has had a very exciting career researching and visualizing immune pathways. Thank you so much for joining us today. It would be great if you could quickly introduce yourself and maybe tell us a quick fun fact about your research or role.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Alice. So as you said in the introduction, my name is Doryen Bubeck. I'm a reader in structural immunology here at Imperial College, and I'm also the director for the Center for Structural Biology. So at an academic institution, I have to balance both teaching and research and service to the university. So on the teaching side of things, I'm a convener for a year 1 biology course called Cell Biology and Genetics. So I teach year 1 students in that and also year 2 students in structural biology. For the research part of things, I run a research group funded by the ERC, or the European Research Council, and also funded by the Wellcome Trust. My group size is about 8 to 10 people, includes postdocs and PhD students in the lab. Overall, we kind of have 2 main themes. One is trying to understand how the immune system works and how your body is protected from damage when the immune system gets switched on. The other half of the lab is working on kind of host pathogen interactions and how your immune system is such an important and potent weapon in fighting bacterial pathogens. So those are the 2 main kind of research interests in the lab. And the third part of my job is the director for the Center for Structural Biology. So this is the bit of service to the university where I take on a management role where I manage the 3 structural biology facilities for the university and provide a training environment for early career researchers who are trying to access the facilities, as well as fundraising to get state-of-the-art equipment in for researchers to use.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Could you tell us something like a little fun fact or one of the best things you find about your role at Imperial?
For me, one of the best things about my role is the research. That's the bit I'm kind of most excited about. And what motivates me and excites me about that are the small discoveries every day. It's finding something new and unexpected in a hidden place. And I like that. I like finding the answers to tiny puzzles. And with each small puzzle piece, do we then think about understanding that bigger question in biology? So I think for me, that's one of the kind of most fun things about my job. And also in the transition of doing the research myself in the lab and running a research group, it diversifies the types of puzzles that I get to solve. So actually that's kind of a fun and unexpected thing for me that I enjoy doing, is because all the different people in my lab have slightly different projects with different research focuses using slightly different methods. So I get to kind of parachute into all of their puzzles, which is fun. And maybe a fun fact about my research, we've just published, actually it just came out yesterday in Nature Communications, a new study in the lab trying to understand how human cells are protected from damage from a giant beta barrel immune pore. And I kind of like to think of it as the David and Goliath of the immune system, because we figured out how this really tiny protein called CD59 stops this giant immune pore from punching holes in your cells when the immune system gets switched on. And that was pretty cool.
That's super interesting. Really good analogies. I like that. Great. And could you tell us what motivated you to pursue a career in structural immunology or in research in general?
I first got involved in research at an undergraduate level, and for me, that was really inspirational to have that experience in the lab at an undergraduate stage. And I was working in the lab of Joachim Frank in upstate New York, and I didn't really know it at the time, but I kind of stumbled upon the beginnings of this huge revolution in cryo-electron microscopy, which was starting in Joachim Frank's lab at that time. He was one of the 3 people to win that Nobel Prize recently for cryo-EM. And for me, the really cool thing about that research experience was it allowed me to really see these proteins, and at the time we were looking at ribosomes, these ribosomes in action, and to be able to visualize in 3 dimensions what these proteins and ribosome shapes looked like, and based on their shape, figure out how they were moving, how they were functioning, how they were interacting with these different protein partners. And for me, that was really inspirational to kind of bring these abstract cartoon representations of proteins and these molecular machines that I read about in the college textbooks, and thinking about them as real molecular machines and seeing how they function in action. And to me, that was really inspirational.
Wow, that sounds amazing to be involved in sort of the beginning of that sort of research. My next question was going to be, is there a particular reason, like a role model you had, and maybe it was somebody in that lab you first worked in, but is there anyone else you can think of that sort of kickstarted your interest?
For me, a real role model in my research was a woman that I met in Oxford when I was doing my postdoc, and her name was Susan Lee. And she was a professor in Oxford running her own group, was a pretty new group leader at the time, and was a mom of 2. And what was really inspirational was, 1, the science coming out of her lab, and 2, how she balanced both the career and having her young family. The other thing about Susan was that she helped me get unstuck in a time that was difficult scientifically for me for my postdoc. I was working on a really hard project and I couldn't make it work. I didn't know how to fix the problem that I was in. And what she did was that she showed me an alternative solution. She put me in touch with new people, new collaborators. She opened new doors for me. And I think when I think about how I see myself or aspire to be myself running my lab, it's about enabling the people that work in my lab to do the job that they need to do.
So leading on from that answer, sounds like she was really inspirational to you. And I was wondering is there any advice you'd like to give to students or women in the department who want to pursue a career like yours?
The advice I would give to women would probably actually be the same as to men in my lab that I would give. It's to follow your passion, be flexible in your approach, and try to find people that will open new doors for you. I think those are kind of the most important advice for any early career researcher, whether it's men or women working in the lab.
Now, a bit of a fun question. You've been lecturing at Imperial since 2012. Have you ever thought about what you would change for the day if you were the president?
I think the college could do more to support their facilities. I think investing in state-of-the-art facilities and creating opportunities that leverage the physical sciences development going on in the college and linking that with the biosciences and the life sciences is really a very powerful opportunity that I think could be even better integrated in. I think so. If I was the president of the college, I'd probably try to recommend a way of doing that more, or amplifying that more. In terms of supporting women and women in science and technology positions at Imperial, I think one of the really fantastic advantages the college has is that amazing nursery on site that I used for all of those years. And it's a real advantage and blessing to have that on site. The only thing I would maybe recommend is to go maybe one step further in providing some fixed number of days for emergency childcare support. Sometimes the nursery schedule is quite rigid. And if you're a traveling academic and need to go on conferences, and your main duty is the pick up and drop off, to have some kind of safety net of resource that you can pull from to enable you to do those kinds of trips. That I think is something that would really help a lot of young mothers better attend those conferences.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Doryen. We really appreciate having you here. It was great to hear from you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.